The sky above planet Vegeta ripped open like torn fabric. Bardock's fist slammed into the center of Frieza's supernova, a ball of death energy big enough to swallow his entire world whole. The shockwave didn't just travel through space, it rewrote it. Cracks spread across the vacuum like broken glass, and for one impossible second, the laws of physics held their breath. His arms shook, his energy burned white-hot around his body, every muscle fiber screaming as he pushed back against something that was never meant to be survived. Frieza's laughter cut through the roar, cold, amused, absolute, foolish monkey. Frieza's voice carried the casual cruelty of someone who's never once doubted the outcome. Did you really think? Then reality broke. Not an explosion, not an attack. Just a tear, a seam splitting open behind Bardock like the universe itself couldn't handle the pressure anymore. Space folded inward like crumpled paper, and Bardock felt himself yanked backward through a corridor of screaming light and geometry that had no business existing. He caught one last glimpse of Frieza's face, confusion, irritation, then nothing, before the white swallowed everything. He tumbled through the void, his battered armor scraping against forces that had no name. His scouter shattered against his cheek, glass biting into skin. He couldn't breathe, couldn't orient, couldn't push back. The fall lasted forever and no time at all. And then the ground found him. Mustafu, Japan, 2:47 p.m. The crater measured 40 meters across. Asphalt buckled and folded like wet paper. Streetlights toppled in sequence, one after another, like dominoes falling in slow motion. Car alarms shrieked from every direction as windows within 2 full blocks spiderwebbed and exploded outward in glittering sheets of glass. A pulse of raw energy rolled out from ground zero, visible, actually visible, as a heat distortion wave that made buildings shimmer and bend like a mirage. 3 blocks away, a fruit vendor's entire stall flipped over. A woman's umbrella turned inside out, even though there was no wind. A dog 2 streets over started howling and didn't stop. In the center of the crater, smoke curling off his body, Bardock lay still, his armor scratched, scorched, stained with blood that wasn't all his own, rose and fell with shallow breaths. His tail twitched once, twice, then his eyes snapped open. Gold irises, absolute predator focus. He was on his feet before the smoke cleared, energy crackling around his fists on pure instinct. His head swept left, right behind him. Threat assessment running automatically the way it had for every single morning of his adult life. No Frieza, no soldiers. No planet Vegeta cracking apart under his boots. Just buildings. Primitive-looking structures of concrete and glass and blinking lights. Weak energy signatures everywhere. Thousands of them, packed together like insects in a jar, none of them even registering as a real threat. His voice came out cracked and rough, tasting like ash and burnt ozone. "What is this place?" a woman screamed. His gaze cut to the crowd forming at the crater's rim. Humans, dozens of them, stumbling backward with pure animal terror on their faces. One man was holding up a small glowing rectangle, pointing it at Bardock like it meant something. A kid buried her face in her mother's jacket and wouldn't look. This is their world's population. The thought landed with cold clarity. And not one of them could survive a single punch from a low-class soldier. Then he felt them, multiple signatures closing in fast from the west, stronger than the civilians around him, but still laughably weak by any Saiyan standard. The strongest reading barely cracked 500. Bardock's tail curled behind him slowly. Eski, above, Musutafu, 2:51 p.m. All units, this is Endeavor. I'm 3 minutes out. What's the situation on the ground? The radio crackled in mount. Lady's earpiece as she sprinted down the main boulevard, her 20-meter form sending tremors through the street with every step. Cars that hadn't already been abandoned were swerving to get out of her path. Behind her, Kamui Woods swung between buildings in smooth, powerful arcs, his wooden vines finding new anchor points every 2 seconds. Death Arms kept pace on the ground, his enhanced legs eating up the distance. Massive crater in Sector 7, empty, Lady reported, breathing harder than she wanted to admit. No visual on the cause yet. Civilians are still evacuating, but she rounded the corner and stopped dead. The crater was wrong in a way she didn't have words for yet. It wasn't your standard explosion pattern. Wasn't Quirk-generated damage. She'd seen enough of that to know the shape of it. The asphalt at the edges hadn't just broken. It had melted, then hardened again into rippled glass-like waves, the way metal looks when it's been too close to something unthinkably hot. And the man standing at the center, compact, scarred, wild black hair, red bandana, battle armor with shoulder guards that looked like it came from a world that hadn't been invented yet, and wrapped around his waist, curling lazily at its tip. A tail, an actual biological tail. Single hostile, Mount Lady said quietly into her comm. This isn't like anything I've seen before. Bardock's head turned. Their eyes met across 100 meters, and every instinct Mount Lady had developed across her entire hero career fired at once. She'd looked into the eyes of villains, fought Nomu that didn't know what pain was, stared down opponents who wanted to destroy everything. But this was different. This was the gaze of something that had seen real war, not street-level crime, not villain attacks, actual, civilization-ending war, and was currently deciding whether she was worth the energy. She wasn't, she could tell just from the look. Stand down. Kamui Woods landed in a controlled drop beside her, his voice projecting with practiced command. You're in violation of Quirk regulation laws. Identify yourself. And Bardock moved. There was no signal, no wind-up. No moment to react. One blink he was standing in the crater. The next his fist was buried knuckle-deep in Kamui Woods' gut. The impact detonated like a point-blank flashbang, a shockwave that cracked the road in a starburst pattern under their feet and blew out every remaining window on the block. Kamui Woods became a projectile. He punched through the side panel of a delivery truck, through the truck entirely, through the front wall of a ramen shop, bowls and chopsticks and scalding broth flying in every direction. Out, through the back wall, and into a concrete support pillar that cracked from base to top on impact. He didn't get up. Elapsed time from movement to impact, 0.3 seconds. Mount Lady roared and brought her fist down like a demolition crane. Bardock sidestepped without looking, the casual, almost insulting sidearm drift of someone who knew exactly where the punch was going long before it was thrown. Her fist detonated the street. Asphalt spraying 15 meters in every direction. She was still registering the miss when he was already on her forearm, running up her arm like a ramp, and his boot connected with the side of her jaw with a crack that rang like a bat hitting a baseball. 20 meters of pro hero went down like a toppled skyscraper. Death Arms came in screaming, both fists raised, putting everything he had into a double overhead strike that could flip a tank. Bardock caught both fists in his palms. Just caught them, fingers wrapping around Death Arm's knuckles the way you'd catch a child's toy. The hero's eyes went wide, his strength strong enough to bench press a loaded city bus, completely and utterly absorbed into someone who hadn't even shifted his weight. Bardock tilted his head slightly, then he twisted, and Death Arms shrieked as both arms bent in directions arms aren't built for. Sweep kick to the legs. Palm strike to the chest that fired him backward like he'd been hit by a car, leaving a 40-foot trail of torn asphalt in his wake. Bardock looked at all three of them. 15 seconds. 3 pro heroes down, none of them capable of standing. He rolled his shoulders slowly, like he was working out a mild stiffness. Pathetic. 8 blocks away, UA. High school, 2:53 p.m. Izuku Midoriya's pencil stopped moving. Not because of a sound, not because of an announcement. It stopped because something in the air shifted, a pressure change so subtle that most of the class didn't consciously register it, like the atmosphere had gotten heavier, like whatever had just happened nearby was too big to not affect the space around it. Eraserhead was out of his sleeping bag before anyone else reacted. His eyes swept the room, then went to the window. His expression didn't change, it never did, but his posture shifted into something coiled and ready. Emergency protocol. Doors locked. Nobody moves until I say. Half the class started reaching for phones. Kaminari and Kirishima were already at the window. But Izuku was there first, nose almost touching the glass, his green eyes tracking the smoke column rising in the distance with an intensity that went beyond a normal person's curiosity. His brain was already running, the energy of the impact, wrong frequency for any known quirk. The crater shape suggests compression from above, not lateral expansion, meaning the force came downward, like a landing, not an attack. The smoke pattern is clean. No fire accelerant. No chemical signature. Whatever caused that crater didn't use a quirk. It just landed. That's not a quirk, he whispered, almost to himself.
The hell are you mumbling about, Deku?
Bakugo appeared at his shoulder, arms crossed, but his eyes were tracking the same smoke. His jaw was tight. He felt it too, he just wasn't going to say so. The energy from that impact. Izuku's hand pressed flat against the glass. Quirks have biological patterns. There's always a source point, always a user signature. This doesn't have that. It's raw in a way that quirk energy just isn't. It's like he searched for the comparison and found it, and it chilled him. It's like asking what's north of the North Pole. The framework we use to understand power just doesn't apply here. Another shockwave rolled out from the impact site, strong enough to rattle UA's reinforced windows 8 full blocks away. Izuku's notebook was in his hands before he'd consciously decided to pick it up. His pencil was moving. Unknown entity, non-quirk energy source, power level, immeasurable with current tools. Origin, unknown, threat level. He stopped writing, because outside the window, the footage on Kaminari's phone showed 3 pro heroes on the ground, and the figure standing over them hadn't even adjusted his stance. The crater 2:56 p.m. They kept coming, and Bardock kept answering. Backdraft threw up a water wall 12 meters high, trying to cut off movement. It evaporated the instant Bardock's energy flared, steam blasting outward in a cloud that scalded 2 support heroes who'd gotten too close. Slugger charged through the steam with his bat quirk active, the reinforced metal glowing with built-up kinetic energy, aim locked on Bardock's skull. The bat connected with Bardock's shoulder. It bent. The reinforced, quirk-hardened, kinetic-charged metal bat bent around his shoulder like it was made of cheap aluminum. Slugger stared at it. Bardock looked at him. Then Bardock flicked him away with the back of his hand, and Slugger left the ground entirely, bouncing twice across the pavement before coming to rest against a fire hydrant. Wind blades hardening. A hero who turned his skin into industrial drill bits. Another who could generate localized earthquakes through foot strikes. Bardock walked through all of it. The earthquakes shook the ground. He didn't sway. The drill skin scraped against his forearm and left no mark. The wind blades deflected off his aura and shredded a bus stop behind him instead. He wasn't fighting. He was walking, and the heroes were obstacles. One hero, missile fingers point-blank range, the desperate calculation of someone who'd run out of other options, fired directly into Bardock's chest. The explosion engulfed him completely. A fireball 10 meters across. Black smoke pouring skyward. The crowd at the perimeter surged backward. Some people actually cheering, thinking that had to be enough. The smoke thinned. Bardock stood in the center of the scorch mark, arms at his sides, looking at the hero with an expression that wasn't even contempt. It was something worse than contempt. It was indifference.
Is that all? His voice carried across the entire battlefield. Effortless, like he was talking in a quiet room. This is what your world sends out to protect people. He raised one hand.
Yellow-white energy began gathering around his palm, crackling, spitting, condensing into a sphere that threw stark shadows in all directions despite the afternoon sun. The air around it warped. Heroes nearest to him actually stepped back without deciding to, their bodies moving on primal instinct before their minds caught up. Even civilians 3 blocks away behind barricades felt it. An inexplicable pressure behind the eyes, a tightening in the chest. The way you feel standing at the edge of something very, very high. Stop! Mount! Lady was back on one knee. Blood running from her hairline, one hand raised. We're not your enemy. Whatever happened to you wherever you came from, we can help. We don't have to. Help. The word came out of Bardock like he was tasting something foreign, like the concept itself was strange to him. Where I come from, there's no such thing. The energy sphere pulsed, grew. The asphalt directly beneath it began to smoke. Then, Texas, smash. The wind pressure arrived before the man did. A wall of displaced air that scattered debris, flattened flames, and forced every person in the area to brace or fall over. Then All Might came down from altitude like a comet, landing in the gap between Bardock and the fallen heroes, with enough force to split the street in a 3-meter-deep crack that ran for half a block. He straightened up slowly. Steam rose from his shoulders. His smile was exactly where it always was, locked in place, immovable, projecting the one thing it was designed to project. I'm here. It's going to be all right. I don't know what you are. All Might said. his voice carrying that register that had ended panic attacks and stopped riots. "I don't know where you came from, but this," he gestured at the fallen heroes, at the smoking crater, at the city holding its breath around them, "ends right here, right now." Bardock let the energy sphere dissolve. He studied All Might the way he'd studied every opponent worth studying. Power level around 7, maybe 800. Dramatically stronger than everything else on this planet. And completely aware of that fact. The body language of someone who'd never genuinely faced something they couldn't eventually overcome. "That's going to make this interesting." "You're the best they've got?" Bardock said, not mockingly, just confirming information. "I'm everything they need," All Might replied. And for the first time since he'd hit the ground, something almost like interest moved through Bardock's eyes. All Might moved first. A straight punch at blinding speed, the kind that generated its own air pressure, the kind that had ended fights across 20 years of heroism before the knuckles arrived. Bardock caught it in one hand. The impact detonated outward, a shockwave that shattered the remaining windows across 4 city blocks, flipped 3 abandoned vehicles, and knocked every standing hero in the vicinity off their feet. A sound like a thunderclap rolled across Musutafu, heard as far as the UA campus. In apartments and shops, people dropped to the floor thinking something had exploded. All Might's arm trembled. His eyes, for just a fraction of a second, showed something they almost never showed in public. Doubt. Bardock looked at the fist he was holding, looked at All Might. The interest in his eyes deepened slightly, the reluctant acknowledgement of a warrior who hadn't found genuine resistance since the last time he was home. "Better," Bardock said. "But not enough." He twisted his grip. All Might was thrown, not fired like the others, but redirected, his own momentum turned against him, sent skipping across 3 rooftops before he caught himself on the 4th, tiles exploding under his landing. The city went silent, not the silence of a paused scene, the silence of 8 million people watching the same thing on every screen simultaneously, every one of them realizing the same thing in the same moment. The symbol of peace just got thrown, and the man who threw him isn't even breathing hard. Bardock's tail unwrapped from his waist, swaying slowly behind him. His aura settled, not flaring, not dramatic, just present. A heat shimmer that bent the air and said everything words couldn't. The sky above the crater had been darkening since he arrived, the dimensional scar above it still raw and pulsing at the edge of visibility. It pulsed now, once, deep, like a heartbeat, and Bardock looked up at it for just a moment. Something in his expression shifted. Not fear, he didn't do fear, but recognition. The look of a man who'd just realized the door behind him wasn't closed. Whatever tore open to bring him here wasn't finished. Next part 2, the Saiyan and the symbol. All Might pushes beyond his limit. Izuku makes contact, and the rift above Musutafu tears open wide enough for something else to come through.